Welcome to Clinician's Corner. Here, Molly and I will provide you with evidence-based insights and practical tools for addressing ultra-processed food addiction. This segment is designed for both individuals navigating recovery and professionals supporting clients through the treatment process. We will be bridging personal experience with clinical expertise to enhance understanding about the treatment of food addiction and the many pathways to recovery.
Each episode explores key topics such as the neurobiology of addiction, strategies for sustainable recovery, behavioral interventions, and the impact of diet trauma. We'll also discuss practical approaches for fostering self-compassion, managing setbacks, and building individualized, empowering eating practices.
Whether you are in recovery or a clinician working with clients, Clinician's Corner offers research-informed perspectives, real-world applications, and therapeutic tools to support long-term healing.
Join us the first Friday of each month for thoughtful conversations that equip you with the knowledge and strategies needed for meaningful progress in ultra-processed food addiction recovery.
Expert insights,
practical tools,
transforming recovery one conversation at a time. Hello, Molly. So nice to see you and so excited to see you in person in a week and a half.
I know, it's coming so fast. I'm excited to see you today, but I'm also very excited to get to see you when I get off the plane. Yay!
We're excited because we are having an in-person retreat and they are both sold out. So we are going to get to spend time with our community, live with, work with, eat with, and have fun with all of the people in Sweet Sobriety. And I think in essence, what I got so excited about sharing today was you had just put together this kind of description of the foundation's modules. And how many skills and tools did it say that?
There's something like over 80, 1, 2, 3, something. There's a lot. There are a lot of skills. Yeah.
And I think we don't acknowledge how much practice and skills recovery takes in the food addiction world. Now, in the substance use disorder world in general, with like alcohol use disorder, opiate use disorder, that's just the way it was. We constantly were doing skills and tools and training around, if this is what you're using for coping, what could we replace that with? But I don't find that in the food addiction field, it's talked about in the same way.
Yeah, I would agree. It's really not. And maybe it's just too young or new as far as like actual treatment intervention goes. Obviously, there's only a few studies. We're one of them, to really show like what works, what those skills and tools would even be. But what's so interesting is that we did this whole consensus thing. We have this, right, this application into the World Health Organization trying to say, listen, this is a substance use disorder. So to me and to you, right, logically, we're going, why would we not take what we've always done in the other, right, with other outlets and then also apply them here? And so, yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what we did with Foundations, was we created that program based on our knowledge and understanding and experience of treating other substance use disorders, other process addiction, applied it to the food. And yeah, I would agree, like not many people are talking about the skills and tools necessary to fill that gap between when I started picking up the food to like now that I put it down, what is going to replace that as that coping skill? Exactly.
Yeah. And in self-determination theory, we call this competence. Right. And so I thought today we could talk about, because I feel like some people are like, oh, if I could just stay motivated, everything change. And determination theory talks a lot about internal motivation versus external motivation, which is kind of those like binding strategies. So, accountability, all of that. And so today we'll just kind of review where motivation can actually come from and what we need to be looking for if it's going to be long lasting. Because I do think a lot of people are like, oh, well, when I have the right mindset, I can start. Or when I have the right level of discipline, or I have another person to push me, then I wouldn't be struggling,
Right. Well, and I also feel like there's like the whole like, messaging of like, I'm not sick enough or you are not suffering enough or like you haven't hit your bottom yet. So like there's a lot of qualification around like when we can start, either from ourselves or from somebody else.
And people are not failing because they don't care enough.
Right.
I think they are struggling because they've been trying to grow something sustainable, but they don't have the psychological soil to support it. So I thought I would introduce self-determination theory, talk about why it's so key in substance use disorder recovery, and what are some of the key components of it. So self-determination theory was developed by Edward, I think, Decky and Richard Ryan. And they tell us something incredibly important. Humans don't need to be forced to change. We need the right conditions for it to emerge. And these conditions come down to three psychological needs. One is autonomy. So I need to feel like I'm choosing this, not like I'm being forced to do this for somebody else. That's why the TV show Intervention isn't always successful. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So autonomy is one. Competence is the next. I have to feel like I'm capable of doing this. And we're going to focus on competence today, but we can't have competence if we don't have skills and tools to be practicing on a regular basis that allow us to feel capable of getting through the craving, working with our emotions, and, any of these challenging situations that might show up in recovery that we don't believe we can get through it. The last component is relatedness. And we talk about this all the time, right? I feel connected and supported. That's community, whether it's your 12-step group, sweet sobriety, life ring, smart recovery, whatever it is. Community is an essential key ingredient. And not only is community key, you have to actually feel seen, connected, and supported in that community. You need to feel like you belong. Just having a community is not enough. But when these needs are met, motivation doesn't have to be pushed. It becomes internal. So I am choosing to do this. It becomes something that feels more steady, something that feels more sustainable. And when they're not, we fall into external motivations like I'm doing this for my kids, or I'm doing this. Another thing I often hear is like weight loss, because weight loss means I'll be accepted by society, whatever it is. And that motivation comes from pressure. It comes from fear. It comes from shame, or the I shoulds, or the I have tos. Those might get us started, right? Those are not helpful. They just won't keep us on the path long term. So, like I was talking about interventions, sometimes that may be helpful. I will say honestly, my first voyage into treatment was not self-determined. It was, my parents were done, my husband was done, and it was you. Oh, to be fair, the truth was I had to go to treatment if I wanted my bank cards and my visa back. So,
Mm,
hey, that was pressure, fear, shame. I have to. And that got me in the door. And I will say, thank God, because it started my journey to recovery. But those things have not kept me in recovery.
right.
It is now
Yeah.
the internal work that I've done. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to kind of back it up a little bit, I think the word motivation does get thrown around a lot. And what we think is motivation versus that internal, like actual state of motivation are two very different things. So, like, as you were talking, I'm sure people are like, yeah, that would be really motivating. And I'm like, yeah, that's a stick and a carrot. It's a really big stick and a really big carrot. And at some point, the game is over, right? As soon as you get the carrot, the game is over. And so the people around us who are using that tactic are just as motivated, if we want to use that word, to keep you, right? They keep moving the goalpost to keep you moving along because then they get what they need, which is, to not have anxiety about what's happening with Clarissa or whatever it might be. But the thing about motivation is that motivation is actually an outcome, right? So the things you're talking about are stick and reward. So reward and consequence,
Yes.
right? That's different than motivation.
Yep.
And sometimes people are like, oh, I really got motivated to go do this thing. And I'm like, what that sounds like actually is novel energy. It was something new and exciting, and you got a lot of activating energy behind you or with that. And that's
Dopamine.
what propelled you. Yes, exactly. And serotonin and oxytocin, whatever, just like all of those things. And then the thing that kept you doing it was motivation because you started the behavior and you started getting, positive and negative outcomes from what you were doing. And that motivated you to make change or keep doing what you were doing or stop doing what you were doing, whatever it might be.
That's the autonomy. I am
Yeah.
choosing this because it gives me peace. It gives me freedom. It gives me stability, not because anyone else has told me this is what I need to do.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is like it's so interesting. So when I worked in corrections, my supervisor, because I always was like, this is so weird. We are forced, right? This is forced compliance. And and my supervisor always used to say there is no research that shows that there is a difference in outcomes between forced or involuntary sobriety kind of deal and voluntary. And that was
Yeah,
21
I was
years ago. Like, I
thinking, I
wonder
have
if,
lots of research
yeah,
now.
I'm like, I feel like that. And at the time, I was just like, okay, yeah, right. And it kept me doing the thing. But the whole time, I was like, God, this doesn't seem right. Like, these two things, what I'm seeing when I'm working with people and intuitively, like, kind of putting together does not match what's being told to me. And that's just it, right? Is that we think about, I think corrections is like one of the best way to like the kind of the best illustration to use, right? Because the whole idea behind having like crime, like something is criminal and there being like some sort of consequence for it is that supposedly it's a deterrent. But if it were a deterrent, then what
Nobody
is
would
it?
be in jail.
Nobody would be in jail. Like, what is it that is still keeping people doing it? And it's because deterrents actually don't work, especially once somebody has been to jail the first time, right? And they are like, okay, I've done it. I've done the hardest bit of it. Like, I could do that again, or whatever it might be. It really doesn't become a deterrent anymore. And the same can be true, like you were saying, like, if this is about like the weight loss, like, oh, I gained the weight. Like, if weight gain was an actual deterrent, nobody would be doing it. But because we've done it and lost it and done it and lost it, right? We're like, oh, whatever, or whatever it might be. I don't want to make this about weight because that's not the whole point of this at all. But yes, to your
But
point,
that's an external
that's
motivator.
an external motivator. And again, to your point, it can get you started, right? There can be like this compliance feeling of like, not wanting to feel the shame or not wanting to, whatever you can want to avoid negative consequences, and that can force you into doing something. But if it doesn't line up with who you are and your values, oh, that's going to be really hard to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, well, this is why diets are what they are, right? It's enough to get us in and get us started, but we can't stick to it if it's not actually what we believe in or we haven't made it sustainable because most of the time we're depriving ourselves food and we're just freaking hungry. So, when you said about the research, I love that you brought this up because self determination does have decades of research across health behavior, mental health, and addiction. So, what the research shows us is autonomous motivation predicts better outcomes. So, people who change because they want to, which I will let our audience know, I went to treatment two more times in my life. So, three total times. The first time, not by choice. The next two times, total choice. I picked the place. I decided on what program was going to be good for me because it aligned with either my values or my identity. And it didn't predict perfect sobriety, but I was way more engaged. The minute I walked in the door, I wanted to know how I could help myself versus How much longer do I have in here? And like until I can get out and go back to do what I want to do. So, because, this autonomous motivation, the I am choosing this because aligns with people's values and identities, it means people have higher persistence, they have lower relapse rates, and they have better mental health overall. In addiction, specifically, people who feel internally motivated at the start of treatment are significantly more likely to sustain recovery than those who are pressured. So, fear might get somebody through the door, but it won't carry them home. The next,
Absolutely. Oh, yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, no, I love, me and my
Well,
research.
yeah, I was just going to say, and this is exactly why we used to call the facility that I worked in a revolving door. So we would have residents for 6 months. They would do all the things they needed to do to be, on community release. And then it wouldn't take long and we would see them back in some kind of diversionary program, right? Whatever it might be. Again, like when there is this forced compliance, when somebody is constantly micromanaging you or telling you that if you don't do this thing, then, right, again, stick and carrot. If you don't do this thing, then you're not going to get this thing, or you will get this negative thing. A lot of times, right, we just keep that's exhausting for the person in that position because you're constantly just doing the thing to make somebody else happy, but it doesn't necessarily line up with, yeah, with you, with who you are.
Yeah. And I think, when what you're talking about and that I'm thinking about is like even drug treatment court, right? Which all of a sudden gave people who had, done crimes in substance use disorder, gave them the choice whether to, now it was like forced choice, it was pressure choice.
Again, if your choice is do this diversionary drug court or go sit your time in jail or on house arrest or with an whatever it might be, it's like, yeah, you're going to pick, quote, the lesser of the two evils, right? Most people do, unless you've been through it before and you're like, I'm not doing that
Yeah.
baloney.
But I think like you're saying, is they had positive outcomes at first because it felt like choice. But then what they realized is it still fell into the same category of external pressure. And that
And the
aligns.
constant moving of the goalposts. And like, you can't maintain that forever and ever. Amen.
Right. And that's what the research also shows. External pressure can backfire. So shame, guilt, or you should. These don't just quote unquote fail. They actually increase resistance. They increase dropout and they reduce honesty. And in addiction, where secrecy already lives, that's gasoline on fire and has a really undermining effect. And what we often see is pressure, 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 pressure. And then the exact behavior you're trying to prevent, which maybe is the binge, or maybe it's the purge, maybe it's, whatever, that becomes the exact thing we do to release the pressure. And then the final piece of research is autonomy supportive care improves outcome. And so what that means is when we offer choice, like we talked about in those episodes before, nobody ever asked me like, what do you want to do? But when we offer choice to the people that we're with, and this is really important for all clinicians listening, when we validate people's ambivalence, that of course there's going to be a part of them that wants this, but a part of them that is still trying to survive using their coping mechanism that's worked for so long. And when we collaborate instead of direct, that people show greater engagement, stronger commitment, and better retention. So this isn't just soft research, this is effective research.
Yeah. And what's super cool is, we didn't even like use this research when we created foundations. It was just, again, intuitively based on our experience and knowledge and treating for 2 decades. We were able to take that and apply it to the food because when we go back to the three components of autonomy, right? Feeling you have the choice, willing to endorse your own behavior, that kind of thing. Check, we do that. And you think about relatedness. So that connection, being cared for, significant to others. So while there is community, there's actual connection in that community. And we hear people talk about this all the time. That third piece, right? To your point, what we really want to talk about today is this idea of competence, right? That idea that we can like actually have tools in our life and the skills to use those tools, and we can be masterful at using those tools. It doesn't even have to be clunky. And even if it is clunky, that's cool because then we can keep practicing until we get to that place. But that competence is where, like, then we have confidence of, like, no matter what it is that I meet today, I'm going to be okay. I have some kind of tool, resource, support, something that I can rely on or lean into, and I'm going to come out the other side of this, like, for the most part, probably no worse for wear.
Yeah, no, and it's true because addiction isn't just about the substances or behaviors. It's often about these unmet psychological needs that we have, right? So somebody's autonomy was limited, right? Their choice was limited. Their competence was questioned. Like, we don't believe you can do this. And their sense of belonging, maybe even their family unit, or maybe in their school or their whole life has been somewhat disrupted. And so recovery isn't about just stopping the behavior. It's kind of restoring that psychological ecosystem. And what that means is we need to build people's competence up. And that's what I feel like we do in Sweet Sobriety. And me and you have talked about why we created foundations, because competence is that sense of I can actually do this. And there's no greater shift I get to see in a client when they come to session or in group and they're like, I did this differently.
Yeah, it's super fun, right? When you get to watch somebody shift and grow and change, going from at first, like, oh, I don't really know if I like what I'm hearing, or like, do I believe what I'm hearing coming out of their mouths, to like, kind of curious. Like, I'm hearing other people say that they're trying these things and it's working for them. So, like, I could probably try it out, to like, I tried it and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work, to like, yeah, I'm doing the thing. Like, I keep thinking about one experience in particular where this person made, again, a self-determined decision to use the tool of journaling. And you know who I'm talking about, right? And it started out as like my stupid journal this and my stupid journal that, my stupid, stupid journal, to, I think it didn't even take a year. It didn't even take a year, to my stupendous journal this, my amazing journaling that, like the epiphanies and the ahas that have occurred because of using that tool. But in order to have competence, we have to know and understand what the gap is, like what is the missing skill or tool. And when you talk about restore, yeah, when we have a history of skills and this, that, and the other thing, whatever, and like it was interrupted, we can absolutely restore what was disrupted or interrupted. But when we don't have that to begin with, when we don't have that blueprint to even work from, like, I think about my own parents, like, I feel like I was born to be like the most adult in the room, even as a newborn. Like, I mean, that sounds really insane, but there are a lot of times in my life when I really can look back at moments and go, wow, like, I was more emotionally mature at 1 day old than my 23-year-old parents probably were. and, and so, but I couldn't know what the missing skills were until I went and started talking to somebody and they started asking me questions. So, to you, on this idea of competence and skills and the whatever, like, how do you imagine somebody listening might be like, okay, I need competence, but like, how do I even know what I'm missing?
Right. And I would say that most people in addiction aren't struggling with the motivation, they're struggling with feeling incapable. And so I would ask that question of that person to say, have there been things that you've tried and haven't worked? Are you someone who believes like you're failing at these things? If you're somebody who's maybe made promises that you couldn't keep, your nervous system is going to believe you can't trust yourself. And no amount of motivation can override that. So our work is going to be about building safety. Maybe it's safety with me. Maybe it's safety so we can open up, right? And get out of survival mode a little bit in order to start to also see what is that goalpost? Because if my goalpost is I eat, junk food, or then I never eat it for the rest of my life, that's a huge gap, right? And that may be insurmountable. If somebody had said to me, when never to eat like sugar again or never to drink alcohol again for the rest of my life, that would I feel incapable of that. I sometimes feel incapable. I feel incapable in this moment of promising myself that and our audience, even though I have a lot more self trust. But I can commit and promise I can do it for the rest of this one day. So, can we start to make some goals or some stepping stones almost impossible not to be able to complete so that I start to build self trust? Maybe it's, you know, making breakfast. Maybe it's something as simple as taking a shower. Maybe it's something as simple as, making your bed. Just one skill that you feel like you already can do pretty flawlessly. Let's just make that the first commitment. So we start where we start to say, yeah, I am somebody who can do this. I am somebody who can show up for myself, because I think recovery is not about stopping binging or stopping using. It's like the junk food. It's about learning how to eat consistently, right? Learning how to notice my emotions. I'm not even asking the people we're working with to regulate their emotions yet. I'm just starting to see, can we create some awareness around noticing some of the emotions we're having? Can you notice what discomfort feels like in your body? Again, I'm not asking you to change it. I'm just asking you to create some awareness. It's about learning, like, when I have an urge, what is a craving for me? Is it my thoughts? Is it how I feel in my body? Like, all of these are skills. All of these are tools, but they don't take as much work as never binging again, never using again. And that's what means I'm in recovery.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is like there's curiosity. Like you're asking yourself questions, but let's say somebody is listening right now and they don't even know what questions to ask themselves, or they don't even know what skills. I'm imagining that even some of the people we know and work with are going to listen to this and go, but what skills am I missing? What am I missing? Tell me, because I want the perfect answer right now and I want to have it right.
Well, I would say some of the skills that maybe I know that we work a lot with in sweet sobriety might be pausing before eating, even just sitting down to eat a meal, reaching out instead of isolating, coming back after a binge. All of these things are starting to put recovery momentum in place, and they all take practice because change is not a decision. It is a learning process and it takes time. I love the word competence because I think of like a surgeon who maybe I need to go for knee surgery. I want somebody who's competent. And what that means is this surgeon has gone to maybe 6 years of school. And then now they've also performed 100 surgeries. And so now that is what competence is. Why in recovery are we not allowed to practice recovery for 6 years and do things 100 times and maybe make things mistakes? Right? Because we're learning and we're growing through all of it. It seems to be the only category
Can I ask you?
where, yeah,
Sorry. I was
I'm
gonna
passionate about this
it's
because
I
I
know,
get
and I'm gonna
so
interrupt, but I
mad.
want to ask you a question because what I'm wondering based on what you're saying is, so if we're competent in something, does that mean that competence also includes there being mistakes or roadblocks or something that we have to overcome and figure out and get
Because
through?
I believe I'm capable even when mistakes happen. So, if I'm a surgeon and something goes wrong during the surgery, I know what to do. I know who to call for help. I know what the next steps are. That's also going to be true in my recovery. I may think I am doing so well, and then I'm noticing, uh-oh, I'm having a wobble. Who do I need to call? What skills do I need to pull out? All of that resourcing is also competence because I know what to do when I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. Does that mean it's going to be perfect all the time? No, but competence also means I know what to do after it's gone wrong. I'm going to try again. I'm never going to give up because I know I'm still autonomy choosing this way of life because it makes me feel better. It makes me feel free. It makes me feel more stable. And this is where I think, like, yeah, the why piece is really important. If somebody is listening and they're like, okay, well, one of my things is that, like, I'm trying to do food addiction recovery because I want to, quote unquote, lose weight. I would ask that person, why do they want to lose weight? What life awaits them if they lose this weight? Is it now that they can play with their kids? Is it now they can go on that trip? Is it now, they feel more peace and freedom? Those are the internal motivators, not the weight loss. So just dive a little deeper. And that's why we, like, in Sweet Sobriety, we are always ask people, like, what is your why? And you need to, like, look at that every day because that is also going to help you have autonomy and practice competence in being willing, right, to show up and do these harder things every single day.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I have nothing to add.
Well, I think it's really just important for audience to know that, like, competence doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from evidence, small moments where we do things differently, right? Like I said, we paused before a meal. I had a craving and I messaged someone. All of those things are rewiring the brain, but they're also letting me know I can do that. I think most of it, people think of recovery as this, we need to leap across this huge canyon and then be consistent forever. And I'll tell you what my nervous system says. Absolutely not. Not today, Clarissa.
What are you talking about? You would leap, no questions asked.
I
What are
was
you
maybe
talking
trying
about?
to build a bridge. Like now I'm off
You
on,
wouldn't. You wouldn't though. Like you're like, give me a rope and
okay,
I
could we
will.
zip line? I would totally zip line across the canyon. That I would do for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, when we think about the components that go into self-determination and we think about competence, which is typically, at least in our experience, probably it's the hardest in that, like, it's easy for us to create a container for autonomy, right? We just always give it back to the client. What do you want? What do you think? What works for you? I'm more interested in that than I am in somebody else's, right? Like an individual's personal data is more important and interesting to me than somebody else's dogma. I don't need these loud voices, these external voices. I don't care what Joe Blow on the podcast told you about how much protein to eat or how much to move your body. I don't care. I really don't. I care about what you're saying to me in front of, to you, the person in front of me. And I think the relational part is easy again, like within our community, because again, we can create the container and hold the space and help influence the culture of within that community in order to embrace this idea of like connection, right? Like to be seen, to be heard, to be witnessed. But that competence piece, it comes with this nasty side effect of perfectionism. And I just want to like name that a little bit because again, we keep using the word competence and I too love the word competence because it's like gritty and
Yeah.
right? It's
It's
gritty.
something you build and then maybe it breaks sometimes and then you rebuild it.
Right. And you can rebuild it because you built it to begin with and you learned skills along the way in order to, right. In order to have competence, you had to learn skills to get there or to become more masterful of those skills. But how do you become more masterful of those skills? Not repeating them over and over again with absolute perfection. You become masterful because like things happen. Like in my house, it's so funny and sorry for the swear ahead of time, but in my home, we call it the Johnson shit show because it doesn't matter what we're doing. It does not matter what we're doing. Something always goes sideways. And from like before we even had children, this has always kind of been our thing. Like, oh, it's that, or oh, it's just an adventure, or, you know, oh, well, if somebody can't take a joke, right? We've always kind of like tried to frame it as this is for science. And whenever we're doing something for science, you have a hypothesis, right? Like you have an idea, you have a guess, but then you have to test it out to see if your guess is right. Right.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
when we can live our life that way, like that builds competence because when something goes wrong, you were the one who, like, you know what went into it to make it go wrong. Right. So you can either back yourself back up to the part where like you before you went wrong and move forward from there, or you can say like, well, some of this stuff worked, but not all of it. So I'm going to veer this way and I'm going to try something over here. Right? This idea of competence again is not synonymous with perfection. And if perfectionism is something that like is already showing up in your brain as you're listening to this, there might be some skills there that we could take a look at.
Yeah, well, even in thinking about like yeah, our foundations course, I think it's like was like 81 skills and tools. If I thought I could do all 81 of them perfectly, I don't know, I probably wouldn't be doing this job.
Right. Yeah.
Because I like to learn about myself, about all the things that don't work, apparently
Yeah.
first before things that do work. And that's just how I've always learned is, try this. Oh, that didn't work. Try this. That didn't work. And each time I'm like, okay, maybe I have to try something differently because it didn't work. But that at least let me know what not to do again. And it didn't mean I never did those things again. I maybe just did them less frequently,
Yeah,
right?
right. Or a little different or whatever. Again, I don't know. I'm a big fan of humans. I'm a big fan of human behavior. Like nothing brings me more joy than to watch people get to figure out who they are and what they're going to do with that information.
Yeah, because there's no better feeling. Like I have had friends who don't work in therapy say to me, like, isn't it hard to have people show up and, maybe they're struggling with the same thing for a long time? And I'm like, that's just human. And there is no better feeling when they figure it out for themselves and they show up for that session and they're like, I can do this. I am not the person I was a year ago who was scared and felt incapable of everything. I know what to do now. That's never going to happen overnight. It certainly doesn't happen in therapy overnight. This is something that this person needed to be willing to maybe show up vulnerably every Tuesday at 10 a.m. for a year before that competence got built. But once they have it, nobody can take that away from them.
Nope, they sure can't. And that's the thing that I love about what we do in particular, right? Is that like we want to give our clients things that nobody else can take away from them because we haven't even given them. We're just giving them the opportunity. I should really reframe what I said. Like we haven't given you anything. We've given you the opportunity to find it within yourself because again, it's this idea of that internal stuff, internal locus of control, internal motivators, internal rewards, whatever. It all goes back to that ancient internal wisdom that we all have. And if we can quiet the external noise, again, social media, our friends and family, I mean, well-meaning people, but who may not fully understand you, the individual that is listening to this today going, yeah, I want to know more about this. I want to have more competence. How do I get more competence? So wrap us up, Clarissa. What are the takeaways there?
If you are interested in foundations, I can share with you some of the things, and the 81 things in there are coping skills, nervous system regulation tools, CBT, DBT frameworks, recovery planning, mindfulness practices, self-compassion practices. And none of those things are about try harder. All of those things are about let's help build your capacity. And when you have that capacity, that helps you handle urges, right? That helps you regulate your emotions. That helps you understand and notice your own patterns. And when you do those things, you don't have to rely on motivation. You have skills, and skills create the competence, and competence creates the self trust, and self trust creates sustainable change. I'm dropping the mic if you can't see it.
Excellent. Woo! Yeah. So If you're listening to this today and you're a clinician or a listener, whomever, and you have more questions about this, or you're curious about foundations, or you're curious about those skills and tools, because maybe you just want to know, like, hey, in my recovery program, am I hitting these things? Because, sometimes, and we hear this often in our spaces, right? 12 steps alone is not often enough. Individual therapy alone is often not enough. Medication, often not enough. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering, like, does this apply to me? Does this apply to the people I'm working for? And I have more questions. Be sure to reach out to us. You can email us at foodjunkiespodcast.com. Or sorry, excuse me, at foodjunkiespodcast@gmail.com. The website is foodjunkiespodcast.com. And you can reach out to us there, and we're happy to either have a follow-up session on this or respond to your email.
Yeah. And we will fill you in on how the retreat went and what we learned.
Yeah.
Because we're building our competence by hosting our first in-person retreats. And yeah, I imagine it's going to be messy and magical at the same time.
It's going to be amazing.
All right. We will talk to you guys next month, and I'll see you next week, Molly.
Woohoo! Yay!
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life Support Group. I'm Sweet Enough. Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals who offer one-to-one counseling and group coaching through Sweet Sobriety. Please subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in today's episode, we'd appreciate you leaving us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps grow our show and allows us to reach others who need to hear this message of recovery. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies. And as Vera always says, the power is ours.